Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is 1:03 p.m. I will call the Friday, October 18th, 2024 Municipal Heritage Committee meeting to order. I would like to thank everyone for coming today. We do have some guests who will be speaking shortly, so we'll welcome them formally at that time. Hopefully, all of you have also had the opportunity to meet our new clerk, Michelle, who will be going on this adventure with us over the next couple of meetings. Adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda? I see James. I see Keith. Any corrections, additions, changes? Not seeing any. I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes. So we need to confirm that the minutes from our August 22nd meeting were correct. So I would ask that someone move the motion for the minutes. Keith, thank you. Seconder, Brock. Any additions, changes? James?
Yeah, I noted two details. I think they're partly the recording person's interpretation of what was said. Under roof replacement 7.1, the plan is to mirror the other building with a red roof, but they will consider different color as well. I think it was to mirror the other in terms of brand name and profile. And then the color question's up in the air. And then under replacement of woodwork number 2, 1-story wood addition, in fact, is cement block addition. And I had made at some point in the past suggestion that we consider having that clad with board and batten. I don't know whether it ever got written down or is in the works.
Okay.
Those are the two things I noticed.
Thank you. Any other corrections or changes? For the mover and seconder, you're fine with that just being as amended? Okay, so we'll call the question. All those in favor of the amended minutes? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Any declaration of pecuniary interest for today? Today it's just going to be an update, so I think you're fine. But thank you for asking. Delegations. This brings us to item 6.1, Friends of the Gananoque Junction Station. We have 2 guests with us today. I'd ask you to come to the podium and introduce yourself and for presentations. You have 10 minutes for the presentation. So.
Should be out full screen. I think that should be good.
Okay.
All right. So good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Nicola Delja. This is Adam. We are members of the recently incorporated Friends of Gananoque Junction Station. And we're here to present a proposal and our findings at the Via Gananoque station situated on Station Road. Sorry, just trying to figure out, there we go. So originally this was started as myself, Adam, and a few others were offered to take over the Thousand Islands Model Railway Club situated in the station. The club has been in the building since 2005, 2007. When reaching out to VIA for a renewed agreement over space use, one thing led to another from just the lease to now VIA looking at the station as a whole. Our most recent information from VIA is that they're looking at the future of the building at present. Given what we found, given what we've talked with the community and people visiting by the station, we decided to go forward to incorporate as a non-for-profit organization. Now, just to get to here, the station itself is built in 1900, open for service in January of 1901, and throughout its 120 plus years of serving the community has gone over several different renovations. What we've done so far at present has been doing some research, going into even Library Archives Canada to find plans of the original structure and finding bits and tidbits to understand what exact renovations occurred. More on site, we've done extensive cleaning of the station office, baggage room, and east wing of the structure. And through this, we found that several areas and aspects of the building have remained in situ, unchanged for 50, 70, 80 years, even going back to the original construction. This includes even the original ceiling being left in situ, as well as trim work and items through some photo references dating back as far as the 1940s. Furthermore, explicitly, the baggage room itself required the most extensive amount of cleaning on site. And through our cleaning efforts, we have also found some interesting artifacts of note. Just for a perspective and comparison, to the right is the 1942 photo of the station office, and to the left is what it looks like at present. The desk, trim work, and shelving that you can see there matches with the 82-year-old photo. And it's not the only area in the structure that still has remaining elements. You can see even here in this photo, the desk, ticket wicket, and even the paint work has been left in situ for many decades and left unchanged. Just for a brief scope of what kind of cleaning work we've done, this is the former women's washroom on the east wing of the building. To the left is how it was found by the club, and to the right is how we have cleaned it up so far. This washroom actually has a good perspective of what renovations were done to the building. As you can see, the original 1900 ceiling in green at the top with drop-in ceiling beams that were added on at some point, we believe, in the 1980s, with the remaining insulation in situ. When putting up a ladder in this area to do some more inspections, this is where we found that majority of the ceiling is still intact, with trim work left in situ, some removed during the renovations. An example of this is in the corners. So when the station was originally built, it was designed as a early tourist style commuter style station by the Grand Trunk Railway to serve the growing tourism in the region. And part of this was like grandiose elements in the construction, such as the curved exterior walls. As you can see here, part of this original construction still remains. The exterior of it was covered up in the 1960s. This is taken from the interior. You can see again how the renovations of the 1980s removed some elements, but a lot of aspects are still intact. The baggage room, which I mentioned previously, was in a very poor state. We had removed a large chunk of material, and at present, most club equipment is also stored in here. An item of note is the blue door situated there is one of 3 doors we believe to be original to the structure from 1900. And not much has changed in this room since the 1960s. Further findings include new old stock equipment, such as the crossbucks that Adam's holding in the photo to the left, dating back prior to the bilingualism regulations in the 1980s. However, more interesting to the station itself is when inspecting the crawl space, several wet batteries were found dating back at least 100 years, if not more. The one to the right is a ceramic cover with Edison markings patented in 1911. From consultation from members of Heritage, Railway Heritage, 2 pairs we found would have presumably been affiliated with the telegraphy system in the station, with a rack that we also found affiliated with the train order signaling system, which has been long since removed. However, through all of this, we found issues, specifically that of the foundation and the roof. From our initial inspection and through consultation with heritage and railway heritage members who have worked or have been affiliated in station rehabilitations, the foundation and roof appear to be original to 1900. The foundation itself is sinking and has visible water damage. Most concerning is the east side, which has a very visible slope in its framing. From consulting again with these heritage individuals, it appears that the foundation will more than likely need to be replaced. The roof itself, we've witnessed visible penetration into the waiting room area and several other areas of the station. It is unclear what the condition of the wood members of the roof are. And from further consultation, we've been also noted that a temporary cover should be put up to deter further water penetration into the structure. Again, this would be ideally done through a contractor just to scope out what issues are present and what remediation efforts would be necessary. These issues have been notified to VIA. However, we have not gotten a direct response back regarding these issues. Again, they've been saying that they are looking into the future of the station as a whole. Because of the interest and appreciation we've had at the station, both from passengers and members of the public, we've shared the history of the structure, what we found, ideas about rehabilitation and potential restoration. We've had comments saying you don't see buildings like this anymore. It's unique. The trim work and design in the structure is in stations around the line serving from Montreal, Toronto. You don't see this as much anymore, which is why we've come to propose a rehabilitation and restoration of the structure. First, it would focus on rehabilitating the foundation and the roof, with further steps looking to revert the building back to how it appeared prior to the 1960s renovations, specifically the exterior as well as the interior. I've noted down through here some points of interest and potential opportunities to do during these renovations. Again, there's other examples in the region that have been successful in this realm, such as the Smiths Falls, the Railway Museum of Eastern Ontario's railway station to the left, and the Clarendon station to the right. I did speak with some those involved with the Clarendon station, and they also did mention that it appears Gananoque would require a new foundation. And just for comparison's sake, to the left is a photo taken in 2005 of the station, and to the right is a photo that I've taken. And you can see to the right the visible sinking on the east side, as well as shingles flying off the structure. It appears that the shingles were put in the early 2000s, and based off of that, would be nearing end of life and requiring replacement. For the foundation, you can visibly see it inside the building through shifting framework, as seen to the left, as well as to the right is the original sill and post foundation, if I remember correctly, that's the term, with visible water damage. Note, this is the side which is seeing the most amount of visible deterioration from the outside. Again, more photos showing the roof deterioration. Shingles are collecting in the gutters at present. And again, this is how it looks like at present. This is the only photo visible of the internal construction and wood members of the roof. Again, further inspection by a certified contractor would be ideal. However, getting such inspections done and getting such contractors on site would have to be going through VIA. There is one piece that we're unsure of. In the 1960s, the station was reclad with asbestos siding. We have seen areas where it appears that it is still present. This is the east side of the structure with where old telecommunication lines are going in. And between 2012 and around 2019, part of the vinyl siding, which was put up in the 80s, flew off the telegrapher's tower, as seen in the photos here. Now, in addition to this, and given the amount of heritage that's been left in the structure internally, we'd also like to put forward an idea for a heritage display, specifically that of the station office. We've talked to a member of one of the regional railway museums, and they seem interested in what we've discussed so far, and has even said that if work would go forward in Gananoque, they'd be willing to discuss, negotiate a potential acquisition for the station, additional material for a telegraphy display representing what you'd see in the 1942 photo as shown earlier. Furthermore, we'd look into producing informative heritage displays, informative displays explaining the station's use, the local region's railway development and history. And finally, we'd also like to incorporate the club layout as well. This would include an interactive element of the local history through depicting the Grand Trunk, now CN Main Line, with a small line depicting the Thousand Islands Railway as well. Again, examples of this can be seen in the Grand Trunk VARS station and Cumberland Museum.
I'm just going to interject very shortly. You are a couple minutes over. How long do you figure for the rest?
It's only a few minutes left.
Okay.
I'll just skip to the main points. So why should the station be rehabilitated? It's a unique heritage structure in the region. It is designated, of course, as a heritage structure within Leeds and the Thousand Islands. It survived demolition attempts in 1978 through community effort. Again, it is a rare early example of GTR's commuter style and tourist style stations. Other examples, while there are some around, many are lost to demolition or neglect. We've again seen interest from the community going up to the station, and members of passengers from Via Rail expressing their intrigue and wanting to learn more about the history, and explicitly even telling us that the station should be preserved or rehabilitated. And given the condition of the roof and the foundation, it would ensure a long-term future for the building. What we're asking for at present would be a letter of interest and support for the project, as right now VIA is looking over what they want to do. Providing a letter of support would present to them that there is community interest in the structure and potential rehabilitation efforts. We'd also like to seek further contacts within the community and within the municipality for those knowledgeable in heritage restoration, as well as anyone that would provide additional assistance and consultation. Finally, of course, we'd like to work with the community in terms of the rehabilitation restoration effort, the development of potential heritage displays, as well as fundraising events, among other things. And that is the end of our presentation, and this is more of a general scope of what we are looking at. We are ideally right now in the initial stage, apart from looking at contractors to look into the building. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll open the floor to questions from members of the committee. Rock?
I just wanted to point out, you said in your presentation there that the property is designated by the township. In fact, it's only listed, and it's an important distinction to make. Designation is done at the provincial level, and we obviously it's only listed. So you should make that distinction in your presentation or in your document.
My apologies. Yes, we understand that it is only acknowledged in the local heritage.
Correction.
Thank you.
And through you, Marcus, is that building owned by the railway?
It is owned by VIA. The land surrounding it is owned by Canadian National. The building itself is owned by VIA.
And in your discussions, have you been talking with VIA?
Yes.
And have they expressed some interest in revitalization?
It's right now they're just looking at the scope of the building, and they are aware of the condition. We haven't had an explicit response as to what next steps they're taking, but
so we know that strategic planning is looking at it, and they are considering multiple alternatives. One of them we don't know exactly, we haven't seen their draft report yet, but our understanding would be either just let the station do repairs through VIA itself, or potentially they would be looking at discharging the station. It was apparently floated in 2015 that'd be passed on to the municipality. They would potentially pass it on to a nonprofit. We're not exactly sure, but they are evaluating different options at that.
yes, we don't know again exactly. We're just going off of what we've seen in the past in actions that VIA has taken.
Thank you. I think and the reason I ask is there would be substantial costs involved in that work. We've certainly seen that on council, and I'm sure this committee, when it comes to Springfield House, our project on Highway 2, when we brought in our engineering firm, costs escalate quickly. So I was really just getting at who at this moment is looking at that and what their potential downstream is. But you've answered it. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, no, okay, sorry.
Further question. I'm just curious. There's only one train a day stops there. Is that two at a moment?
Yes.
But, and there's no, VIA hasn't made there's no shelter or anything for passengers?
There's supposed to be an automatic lock that allows people to go into the waiting room, but we're not sure it's worked in 10 years.
It seems to work, seems to not work. We've even had to tell maintenance when one of the locking mechanisms like broke down at one point. So the station itself is designated as the shelter for the station.
So it is supposed to unlock 30 minutes before a train arrives, and I believe lock 30 minutes after.
Yes.
So yes, it is an unstaffed shelter, but it does have waiting room, it has a bathroom, and they are serviced and cleaned regularly.
Yes, the historical research document that was forwarded to us certainly points out the merits of the building and its history, et cetera. I'm just curious, it makes reference to how this station was somewhat of a model for some other similar excursion-based stations, and it mentions Kenora, Algonquin Park, and Gravenhurst. Are you at all aware of the status of whether those buildings still exist or
Some
anything?
of it been destroyed.
I'd have to double check in detail. I think even the document references I think some photos in the footnotes or end notes, I should say, and they do list, I think, where some still exist, where some do not exist. Given again the building's over 120 years old, upkeep would very much play a factor into what is still standing at present.
Thank you.
One thing I noticed you didn't mention in your presentation, you spoke about the fact that the station was a tourist oriented station, but in fact, Thousand Islands Railroad took passengers to Gananoque, who then took the ferry to Clayton. So it was a major means of getting to the United States from this side at that period prior to the building of the bridge.
Had to compress a lot of information down for a presentation. We did actually want to highlight, it is one of the last structures of the Thousand Islands Railway, especially with the downtown Gananoque station burning down in the 90s. That's also further bolsters the case for preserving the station, especially with the rail trail potentially could be extended, and at least the alignment into the town proper would be highlight the history of the Thousand Islands Railway.
I have a couple questions for you, and then I have a couple questions for staff. In terms of VIA's plan for the station, are you aware if VIA has engaged the Federal Heritage Building Review Office in looking at the property, if they are considering decommissioning or deaccessioning the property? That is a stage that they would have had to do. I don't know if you're aware if they have.
So when I was in communication, I did receive this past Wednesday from one of our contacts. It doesn't appear that they are at that stage. We did get a confirmation from them that it is not federally protected under the Heritage Stations Act. But in terms of any other steps, we've been basically told that it's being looked at. They still haven't made a final, what the next steps are going to be with the station, but they are looking at the station as a whole at present. Nothing explicit so far.
So in terms of your organization's use of the station, right now that is a lease. And would the question, because I've seen this in a number of other cases where they turn around and said, we'll give it to you for $1. Have they discussed that at all with you?
We know that that's one of the options that's probably being studied by strategic planning. Again, we haven't seen the draft report, but that is something we have heard from people within VIA. We are somewhat potentially hoping for that, because that would mean if we own the station, then we can apply for grants to cover the capital costs in restoring the station. So But yeah, again, it's until we have the actual SPD report in our hands, we're unsure which direction VIA is leaning in.
And for staff, and you may not know this question at this point, there was a reference in the presentation to a 2015 effort to transfer it to the municipality. Has the municipality been approached at all?
Through you, not that I'm aware of. However, I do know that we, as Councillor Gurel referenced, been incurring significant expenses with respect to other heritage properties. So any request to acquire this property would require council consideration and a lot more information about the potential uses of the property and the anticipated costs.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions?
Is there additional uses, or like will it continue to be used by VIA, or is there room for additional uses at the same time? Or I guess I'm looking for some economic base to justify its continued.
Yes, at
existence.
present, the waiting room only covers the old men's waiting room. The section that was the women's waiting room, it was transformed into offices, but is currently effectively up for reuse. So
Yeah, that would be.
we were thinking it could, again, on top of the heritage display in the office, it could be made a rental locations for events. It'd be a fairly unique location right along the railway. It'd be the right size for like receptions or just small meetings. We are definitely studying potential lease options for that.
Jonathan.
Gentlemen, thanks for your presentation today. It looks like you've put a lot into this over a considerable period of time. Well done. So what do you see as being sort of the next 2 or 3 most pragmatic steps that you need to get through in order to keep this project of yours on track?
Well, right now, at least for myself personally, would be trying to get some sort of temporary cover over the roof. As mentioned earlier, the water is actively leaking into the station, and we don't know what the current condition of the wood members are. We've consulted again. A family friend of mine has studied heritage architecture, and their first comment was, you need to have something over that roof. I myself have sent several emails to VIA emphasizing my concerns. Again, the only response back we've heard directly is that they're just looking at it right now. The follow-up to that would be basically getting contractors on site just to get a scope of what the costs are. I know in 2015 they did cite a repair cost. However, we have been unable so far to get a breakdown as to what those costs would be. We've heard numbers floated around, nothing specific from some of the people we've talked with. However, having something more concrete would be ideal in this situation. And I think the other point would be reaching out further to other groups. We are actively wanting to meet with I think the Rotary and the Lions Club. We have reached out to the Leeds and Thousand Islands Historical Society. They do seem interested in what we've talked to them so far. Adam, is there anything?
Oh God, sorry. Just thinking out, going back to the estimates also, like, based on what we've heard, given stations a similar footprint and similar scope in terms of work, our highest estimate would be under $1 million at least. So you don't want to state a price obviously at the moment, but just like,
Well, under $500,000.
yeah, that's it. Like
Under $500,000.
It also doesn't help with the pandemic and in the inflation and spike there. It's a bit hard to base estimates based on prior projects that were made in like 2014 or so. But yeah, our highest estimate would be around like 700,000.
Yeah, well, we've heard some numbers, and going off of the highest amount, it seems to be closer to 400, 500,000, depending again on what scope of what deteriorated members there are, what needs to be replaced, et cetera. And right now, we can only see what we can see at present. You'd have to take a further look again to get a better scope of the costs.
Oh, and another immediate concern would also be, we're not sure when the last time the septic system was inspected. It's possible it hasn't been touched in 20 years, so that's obviously something else that needs to be examined as soon as possible.
Going back a few slides, you had a couple of questions, and one of them was a letter of support. One of the questions that I would put to both staff and Councillor Gorell, that would need to be a letter not from the committee, but from council. And I'm seeing some nods there, so that's, what specifically in terms of the letter would you be asking for? Just a general letter of support for the continued use of this as a community facility?
That's what we've been told by VIAs, like they're just interested
Uh,
for showing that there's community interest, there's
Acknowledge the value
Yeah.
of the station, its heritage, for its like for interest in rehabilitation potentially.
just show be able to show internally at VIA that, okay, there's support for putting capital into this building.
Yeah.
I do have a concern with some of those and the scope of that request, given that this is a privately owned property. And I appreciate all of the work that has gone into this and the time that has been taken. It is a listed property on the Heritage Register, and I would be comfortable providing a letter to the extent that this is a listed property on the municipality's Heritage Register, and that there are heritage attributes that should be protected and preserved. But to go further and speak to ongoing use as a community facility and the use and more details about the structure, given that we're speaking with the tenants as opposed to the owners,
Yeah.
I do have some concerns with the scope that's being requested.
That's entirely reasonable. Like the section you started with, that's all we need at the moment. Just again, general support for demonstrating that, I mean, the township believes that it is an important structure from a heritage perspective. That'd be perfect at the moment.
If the scope, just for clarification then, if the scope that is being requested is simply confirmation that it's a cultural asset in the municipality and included on the Heritage Register as a listed property, we don't need to go to council for that. That's a letter that we can write as staff just to confirm that it is a property on the municipality's Heritage Register.
Thank you. Comments?
I would move that we write such a letter.
Seconder? Jonathan, any further discussion? So the letter would be that staff write a letter confirming the heritage status of the property and the municipal inclusion of it on the Heritage Register.
Yeah.
Perfect. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation today and sharing with us what you have been working on. We look forward to seeing what comes next.
Thank you.
This brings us to the business portion of the agenda. 7.1, the Heritage Properties Working Group update. Many of the people around the table are on the working group. But just to, in general, provide a bit of an update, we have been working on several of the properties proposed for designation, and thank you for all of the members for their work to date. We have been getting some of the materials from the archives, and I know, James, you've been doing some of the background research on some of the properties. And this morning we did 2 site visits to the LaRue House and to the property on Tower Road, and both of those went very well. Some very, very interesting properties. Now there's a lot of background work that will need to be done on those. We still will be bringing forward to the committee in the near future information on the properties that are requested for removal. We have done some research into some of the properties, and in general, I won't speak to the specifics, but the sense is some of these properties probably should, but that will be a matter to be discussed at the committee as a whole. For the members of the committee, anything that I have missed? Not seeing anything. Next item, designation bylaw update, Long Point School. I apologize for getting this to everyone at a relatively late period of time. For those of you who were on the previous committee, this is going back to just about 3 years ago. We approved a celebration grant for the replacement of the roof on the Long Point School, and they've actually completed the work. It looks really good. But at the time we did that approval, we also said that the designation statement should be updated to reflect the current requirements. And so the memo goes through all of the legalese on this. This would be not a full redesignation. It's considered an update under the Act, which means there's a bit of an abbreviated process. Basically, what we've done here is we've taken the existing designation statement and just fit it into the current evaluative criteria. Some typical rewording, and on the page just before with the photograph, there is an updated statement of cultural heritage value and interest for the Long Point School. And this has been designed to meet the current legal requirements for such statements. So we've brought it forward today for the committee's review. If the committee is satisfied with it, the committee could choose to recommend the council to use this as an update. Committee members can also, if they want, defer this until the next meeting to give them some more time to review the document. So I leave that to the committee to consider.
Can we just have like 2 minutes? Thank you.
May I ask a question? If this goes to council, it would follow the regular procedure for designation in terms of having the bylaw passed?
The bylaw would need to be passed, but we wouldn't have the same advertising requirements. We just have to let the property owner know that we are updating the statement. And other than that, it would just be council would review and approve the updated statement to replace the existing statement, which has been attached as Appendix A.
I wonder, are we in time to revise a couple of the dates?
Absolutely.
Described here. The stone structures, so at a belfry. Those belfry and flagpole were installed around 1900. I could get closer dates if I could refer to my notes at home. And the vestibule as well as 1907, I think. Although they look older because of the gingerbread. I was surprised to find that the written record is that late.
James?
So perhaps we defer this to next meeting and give us a chance to read it all more completely and make sure everybody's agreed on the details.
Absolutely. May I have a
Motion to do
defer?
that?
Yeah. So
Defer this
James
to the next
moved.
meeting?
Seconder? Art, any discussion on the deferral? Not seeing any. I will call the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. New designation, Lily Cemetery. We are still working on the updated, well, it's a new designation, so we are doing some more of the background research. We just recently got some photographs that we will be integrating into the report. For those of you who are with the archives, if you have any historic photographs, we would be interested in seeing those, particularly around the commission of the cenotaph. Any early photos of activities there. Again, we're hoping to bring that forward to the next meeting. So, any questions on Lily's? Okay, that brings us to the end of the business. Information items, staff update.
Thank you. Through you, I've distributed some copies of what I am proposing for the budget for 2025. Essentially, I am proposing the exact same budget that we carried forward last year. So this is purely a committee operating budget. So I've included $2,000 for staff and council development, which has been used over the last 2 years in terms of attendance at the Ontario Heritage Conference. There are amounts in there for advertising and memberships. There's some in there for contracted jobs if the committee identifies a project where we may need to obtain some consulting help. As previously noted for past budgets, if there is an initiative that we need additional funds for, there are reserve funds that we could always take a report to council for and request funding if there's a specific initiative that the committee decides to undertake.
Thank you. One general question I'd put to the committee before I ask staff. The Ontario Heritage Conference is actually going to be in Prince Edward County this next year. So my question would be is who in the committee might be interested in attending? Because that might have an impact upon the budget, particularly if there's shared transportation. So Jonathan, I will inevitably attend. Anyone else who's interested? Okay, so I would say if it's just a couple of us, then that's probably easily covered by the existing allocation. Would that $2,000 also include if you wanted to bring someone in for training?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Questions on the budget? Keith?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The 3 items at the bottom of the page, I'm just curious, that's money that has already been, or how it's been used in this fiscal year?
To be honest, no, it's not. I believe that is what that is, expenses. So the transfer to the reserves, the $10,000 is the annual transfer into the reserves for the Heritage Celebration Grant. The material supplies and other expenses I am not certain exactly what that is. And the contracted services is what I have above. So the $2,000 in the contracted services is representative of what's above. So the information here or below under the revenues and expenses is being pulled down from what is above it. If you look at the total, it's the total of the above operating budget.
Yes.
So it's a consolidation of the accounts. It's a consolidation of the account lines, separating out the transfer reserve funds and the consulting services.
Jonathan?
Through you, so our actuals are, I assume, below this on a regular basis?
Our actuals, I don't have them shown here, but in the last few years, we have not spent very much money other than attending conferences.
Perfect. Other questions? What would you need for us going forward? Do you need a motion or just?
No, that's fine. This is information. If there was any input, I would take it into consideration in terms of what's going forward. But at this point, if we're satisfied with status quo, that's what I'll take forward.
Okay. So people seem to be happy, so we will go with that. Council update. Councillor.
And thank you, and through you, Marcus. I think council received the report that had gone through the committee here regarding Springfield House and Tacoma. And I felt that council was very receptive and deferred to the expertise of the folks. And I think well on target. And it was described by our operations manager, the process, the monies, et cetera. And I think council was very supportive. So, and I think that was the big item at council. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other business?
Will there be any discussion at this meeting of the site meeting as we did this morning?
That was under the working group, but if you have additional information, you're welcome to add it.
I just went back to archives after the first visit, and I pulled a file here called the Rue House designation, and they went through this process in 2000. Apparently, the township of Escott did, and then the request was withdrawn. So it was actually in the process of being advertised, I think, when the request was withdrawn by the owner, and it didn't proceed. But there's been a lot of research done in it already.
Perfect. And I'm assuming you'll share that with Lindsay because I know she's consolidating a lot of
Yes,
this.
it's right here.
Perfect.
Anybody that wants to see it.
Thank you so much, Art. Any other new business? Not seeing.
Sorry, just quick question for clarification, since we were just talking about budget. I'm just looking, we have new designation for Lily Cemetery. There's discussion around LaRue House, and I'm not certain if that is a designation that the working group is discussing. I'm just thinking about advertising associated with the designation process in the 2025 budget lines. I currently only have $300 proposed for advertising, but if we're doing newspaper advertisements, that's not going to go very far. So if we're looking at a number of designation potential for next year, when I'm saying a number, I'm maybe 2 or 3 or 4, depending on what the working group is looking at, I'm going to need to increase that budget line. So just for information, based on the discussions here today, I'm going to increase that. Budget line.
When was the last time you used the $2,000 for the contracted jobs?
No, we haven't. So what I'm going to do is I will reallocate that up for advertising, which is probably
We could bring forward to council.
through you. I'm not sure exactly what is being referenced because we wouldn't be doing maintenance on somebody else's property. So the contracted jobs was in there in response to the provincial legislation changes. If we were going to need to maybe bring somebody in to update some bylaws or something, if there were issues with property maintenance, brush clearing or something, we would have to look at who the owner of the property is, what the issue is, and what the appropriate mechanism would be. If it's a township property, we would address that through our operations department. If it's a private property, we would follow up with the property owner.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Not seeing any. May I have a motion to adjourn? From Art, seconder. James, We'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. And it is 1:53.